Hi, I'm Kellam Parks. I am a lawyer, law firm owner, and law firm owner coach. Super excited to be on the podcast here today.
Hello, everybody. I'm Tomchick. Welcome to the Connected Mindset Podcast, where each week we bring you the stories to better connect with the world around you. Let's dive into this week's podcast. Kellam, you've seen thousands of family law cases, and one of the common questions that comes up is the system broken, or are the people that believe the system's broken looking at it all wrong?
So it's an imperfect system. So I think it's a little of both. But I'm a firm believer that you've got to take reality as it is and try to improve it. So when it comes to the legal system, certainly things could be done better. It's not always fair. There's a sense that if you don't have money and you don't have a lawyer, you're at a disadvantage. And unfortunately, that's true. And you don't have a right to a lawyer in a family law case. Mm-hmm. So it is unfair and it's imperfect. But I think that there are lots of things you can do to improve it. For instance, I was just asked recently to sit on what's called the Boyd Graves Committee. And it's a bunch of lawyers and academics across the Commonwealth of Virginia. And we actually work on, hey, these are things that should change in the law. And so we look at it, we make recommendations to the legislature, and then hopefully they'll fix the law. So a judge approached me recently and said, hey, would you do that? Because I've been practicing now for almost 26 years. So that's how I do it. So I try to fix the system with what exists.
Yep. Yeah, you got to play the game by the rules, but still push against the rules like you guys are doing on that committee to try to change things from the operator's level. The things you guys see on the ground that the judge may not see or the legislators may not see, to be able to give them feedback to make those changes. Is that when you were a young lawyer coming up and you had this bold vision of becoming a lawyer, what stuck out to you as the driving, push or what brought you the passion to say, I want to be a lawyer to solve X?
Yeah, so I think it's a little both. A couple of things I should say. One is, on the very basic level, I always like to argue. I like to speak. I was in debate. I was that kid. I'm very logical by nature, so I like to think through problems. But I always also wanted to help people. And so I actually thought I was going to do criminal law. I thought I was going to be a prosecutor. So I geared my education toward prosecution, worked for the U.S. Attorney's Office one summer while I was in law school. I clerked for a judge. And right before I graduated, I realized, I have all these loans. I don't think I can afford to be a prosecutor. So I went to the civil world. And then I've done almost every type of law in the last 25 years. But I like helping people. And so sometimes that's litigation. Over time, I've actually sort of transitioned. I enjoy litigation less because it's always a battle. And it's an important battle. But I've fought those battles. So now I like sort of the business of law more. I like helping other lawyers figure it out. I like helping my clients figure it out sort of on a macro level. As you know, I'm in the cybersecurity space, so I can help businesses protect themselves. So it's a little less confrontational, and I'm solving problems, and it's sort of a win-win versus a win-lose.
Yeah.
But no, it's really helping people is sort of at the core what we try to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting, the battle, because the different legal things I've gone through, I always want to win. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the lawyers are like, how do we find the middle ground? But when you're going against somebody because they did something wrong to you, or you feel like you're wronged, as the client, it's like, I want to win at all costs. And it's like, my lawyer may not feel the same way because they're not emotionally attached to it. So when you say, you're able to kind of look at things logically, look at the laws, the rules, and almost guide the client and help them by bringing those emotions potentially down. I think that's critical from any court case, whether it's cybersecurity, family law, and otherwise, because as the client, you bring a lot of emotions into it that you may not have, and I think that's an important element.
Well, it is, especially in family law. So one of the traps I see some lawyers, especially younger lawyers, is what I always like to say is I sympathize with my client, but I don't empathize with my client. And I just tell the client, I say, look, what are your goals? And that's the first thing, honestly, I think every lawyer should do is talk to their client and say, what are your goals? What do you want? And I really believe it's our job and I tell the clients, it's sort of a standard thing. I'm going to help you so long as what you're asking isn't illegal, immoral, or unethical. And I don't anticipate any of those things. But as long as I may not agree, I may tell you have a very low chance of winning. Now, when I walk into court, I'm going to act as if, of course, we're going to win. But it doesn't do the client any good if you're snowing them and giving them false hope. But also sometimes I try to change the perspective of the client and say, okay, you told me that your goal is to get more time with your kids. Trying to put your wife in jail for X, Y, and Z, or trying to show that she's committed adultery purely to get back at her probably isn't going to help you with your goal. So let's take the emotion out of it. I also, quite frankly, say, look, I'm not qualified and overpriced to be your therapist. Yeah. So let's work through those issues elsewhere. But no, I think I try to achieve my clients' goals, and I tell them what's possible within the system. So, hey, look, we can't do this, or I'm happy to do this, but it's going to cost you $100,000 and you're fighting over a $10,000 thing. And if they still want to do it, so they have emotional attachment. I had a client one time that had a built-in aquarium at his house. And he said, well, I gave her the house, but I want the aquarium. And I explained it's a fixture. It's part of the house. You can't get it. I want it. I said, well, okay, it's going to cost you X amount. It's like 10 times what this thing's worth. I don't care. I put in writing, you understand. So later on, he remembers. And of course, we went to trial. We lost. But he thanked me. He said, hey, I appreciate you trying. Now, if I hadn't told him, but I tried to talk him out of it. So you're right, though. It is honestly getting that emotional buffer and helping the client understand maybe how to really get their goal. Sometimes it's even helping them figure out what their goal is. Like they're saying something but if you dig a little deeper, that's probably not it. So it really is sort of and that's experience, right? So I've been doing it a long time. As a young attorney, you're just like, oh, let's do it. Let's win. And there's a place for that. But yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. A lot of our listeners are entrepreneurs, athletes, people maybe transitioning out of the military. And we hear a lot about, when we talk about connection, we talk about mindset, a lot of it diverts to the difficult times, like a family law case, or, their wife or husband is going after them for their money. Maybe they were an entrepreneur early on, they found somebody, and then that person realized that if this ever ends, then I'm going to go after them for, all of their, half of their company or some of their money. And I think that's what gets glorified, but that's probably not a majority, of the cases. But when we see the news lines and we hear from people who are going through it, typically you only hear the extremes.
Sure.
So I'm curious, kind of percentage wise, like how many are high conflict, type cases versus ones that just kind of pass right through and the paperwork, everybody agrees and goes on with their day.
The ones that are low conflict, a lot of times don't go see a lawyer, or they don't hire us because we're a little more expensive because of our experience. Yeah. So the ones I see are a little more high conflict. But part of what I try to do when my clients come in, I go, what are your goals? And then I always say it's always better, understand you want to win. It's always better to resolve it, because then we have control over the situation, and it's going to cost a lot less money. It's going to be a lot less stressful. It's going to get it a lot quicker. And you're not putting your fate in the hands of somebody in the black robes that I don't have any control over. I've won cases I should have lost, and I've lost cases I should have won because the judge that day, right? Yeah. I don't know what they had for breakfast. They were in a bad mood. A key piece of evidence didn't come in that had nothing to do with. So a lot of times people come to me and it's very high conflict to begin with. We represent in this area, Tidewater, obviously, we represent a lot of military. I've had the privilege of representing a lot of special forces guys, which is very difficult because of the nature of their work. It's not even a usual deployment in the nature. And so that really is difficult when you have kids, but we try to work through that. And so a lot of times people come to me with certain conflicts that we can diffuse. When it comes to money, a lot of times I say, look, it's money. You can pay me $100,000, or you can pay her or him $20,000. And again, sometimes I have clients goes, I want to pay you $1 million and I don't want to pay her anything. You don't really mean that. I go, the principal. I said, well, principal's expensive. Yeah. So again, I'm trying to talk them out of it. So I would say out of my cases, especially now, so my practice has shifted. I only handle a low number of high asset divorces usually. Though we have young lawyers I'm training, so I'll take other cases and say, look, think of me as the general, and then we train. And we have 8 of our 14 lawyers do family, so we do all sorts. But it's a long-winded question to say. It kind of depends. But yeah. I see the whole spectrum. It's very rare. I will tell you one. So I had one client in my entire career that came to me hand in hand with his wife, smiling. He was a Navy pilot. She was a Dutch model that he had met overseas. 2 of the best looking people I've ever seen in my life. Came in and they're like, hey, we got married month ago, we need to get a divorce. We understand we can't get it annulled because that's a legal thing. We just made a mistake. And they were happy. They both came in. Can you both represent us both? I'm like, no, I can only represent one of you, but it doesn't have to be acrimonious. And they smiled the whole time. We signed the paperwork. They gave us a little kiss and a big hug. 1 out of a million. I mean, even the easy ones, it's usually not like that, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
I'm sure, the middle ground is the money and then the property. How much more conflict comes with kids? I'm sure that's where like the page turns over and you're like, all right, this is a whole different animal that we're dealing with here. And that obviously brings more emotion, but it also brings more threat to, can I be the parent that I wanted to be? How frequently does that come along when it involves kids? I'm sure that's most of the high conflict is either the property, the money, or the kids, and mostly probably the kids, because the parents, they want different things because they don't see the world the same. That's probably why they got divorced. So they have different parenting styles. They have different ways they want the kid to be parented and grow up. Mm-hmm. So just a little on that, like how much more conflict does having the kids in the equation, does that create?
A lot, unfortunately, because first of all, when what I tell my clients generally when they come in, I said, look, there's only 2 reasons to litigate, like take it to trial. One is if you're arguing over a substantial amount of money, because it's going to take a lot of money to get there. So if you're arguing over millions of dollars, it doesn't have to be millions, but hundreds of thousands of dollars, that's truly at issue. Because, and I don't need to get into the differences, but there's separate property and marital property. And sometimes it's like, look, they're not going to get it anyway, inheritance or something like that. But if you really have something to fight about money-wise, fine, because there's just money. Mm-hmm. But kids, because kids, you can't put a price tag on kids. And what I tell my clients is, look, let's not go to trial on whether or not you're going to get 1 extra day a week. Mm-hmm. We can try to negotiate that. But if the other parent is not a good parent, or there's real concerns, or they're trying to mess with your time with your kids, or any number of reasons. If it's a real issue, then you don't have a choice. And what you said was true. Sometimes you have they have different idea of parenting. And unfortunately, what I see a lot of times, and I'll tell you, I don't represent clients to do this. So if I see my client doing this, we have a conversation. If they don't stop, I fire them. Yeah. They weaponize their kids. Yeah. Right. They're like, oh, I'm going to get back at the spouse because I'm going to take away their time with our kids. Or, so one of the questions I ask both men and women that come to my office, they say, I want custody. Why do you want custody? Mm-hmm. And obviously, historically, women have been caregivers. It's not always, it's a lot less case these days. So I don't make that judgment, but I ask, why do you want your kid? Why do you want primary custody? And if the answer is, oh, the other parent, I've always done that, or the other parent has an issue or whatever, fine. If they start with, because I don't want to pay child support, I'm not your guy. Yeah. Now, if you say, hey, we're both good parents, but I have a more flexible schedule, and quite frankly, I can't afford to pay child support and do X, Y, and Z, that's reality. But if you're just trying to buy your kids away, you can find a lawyer, but not me. That's not what I'm into, right? Because you talk about the system. Yeah. Sometimes that's what it is. You get in there and then there's a guardian ad litem, which is appointed for the kid. And then they're involved in therapists and the teachers and the home visits. And it gets very ugly very quickly.
Yeah. And everybody has their own perspective, perception, the way they look at things based off of their past conditioning as well, which makes it even that much more complex.
Sure. And again, that goes back to, I don't judge my clients. That's not my role. Mm-hmm. So what I tell all my clients is, look, my whole role really is to take your facts, apply Virginia law, apply the court we're in, because if we're in a certain court with a certain judge, we know that what's going to maybe happen. Give you the range of worst day, best day, probable, how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take. And then you tell me, you make the best decisions possible. Look, I've represented clients that have made decisions I wouldn't have made. I've represented clients that quite frankly, maybe aren't the best parents, but they're not abusive. And, if you put me up into a lie detector and said, is the mom or the dad a better parent? I might be on the other side of things. Mm-hmm. But that's okay. Because then that's not my job. But I also don't have to represent anybody I don't want to.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good benefit to have. It's not, here's your, docket of clients. You have to serve these people or else that's your job.
Well, it's private practice. Yeah. Like if I was going to do a Commonwealth attorney,
exactly.
That's not my choice. I have to prosecute, or public defender, same thing, but no private practice. And then it also obviously comes with the advantage of being older and more successful, that I don't have to take every case. I mean, as a young lawyer, I took cases I didn't necessarily want to take. I never compromised my integrity, but I absolutely took clients that now I wouldn't because, I had bills to pay and I had a family to feed.
We've all done that as early in our entrepreneurial days.
You always regret it, right?
You figure out who's right for you and who's not. And I think that's an important lesson to learn.
Absolutely.
Most of the people listening in probably don't understand the court system until they get into it, which is... it's a shock to a lot of people. And I think that's why they start pointing the finger to say the system's broken, because they don't understand. There's a little bit of ego going in there. But curious if you could dive a little bit into the cases you've had on average that you've either won or lost. Is it based on the client's understanding of what, the evidence they need? Is it based off of the power, the skills of the lawyer, or is it potentially the perception of the judge? Like, you kind of get any judge they give you. And that judge may just not really understand what's going on. And they're like, that lawyer sounds better, so they're going to win the case.
It's honestly a mix of all of it. So as I said, I've won cases I should have lost and lost cases I should have won. Sometimes that's because I don't have the right facts. And again, I try to be as honest as possible with my clients to say, look, this is what we're facing. I'm happy to fight the fight, but just understand we have a big way to go, or we should win this case unless something goes weird, and sometimes things go sideways. So sometimes it's the facts. Sometimes it's something procedurally in the case goes wrong. So you have a key witness and the witness doesn't say what you need him to say. And no matter how much you try to rehabilitate them, they don't get it out and you're done. Sometimes it's a rule of evidence bars you from getting something that's in. So one thing I also tell clients, and your audience should know if they don't already, is courts are not where justice may prevail, right? It's and I hate to say this because it's your life, but it's a game. There are rules, right? So the truth may not come out. You may not get in what you need to get in. Sometimes it's skill, and that's where experience comes in. And so sometimes I meet with clients and I go, hey, this is what I charge, which is a lot. And they go, oh, that's a lot of money. And I said, absolutely. I'm not going to judge your ability or desire to pay me. There are cheaper attorneys, but here's what I bring. I bring 25 years experience. I bring this, I bring that. And that matters. I've won cases. Some of those cases I shouldn't have won. I've won because there was no lawyer on the other side, or there was a young lawyer on the other side, or a bad lawyer on the other side. The ESQ beside her name, lawyer, JD degree, it's first in class and last in class, much like a doctor, right? They pass the bar. You don't know if they're smart enough to pass the bar, but maybe it was their fifth time. You don't know. So the idea is, at the end of the day, it could be all those things, and it honestly could be the judge. The judge might not like your client. Now, a good judge hopefully will not shade their opinion, but we're all human. So it really can be a mix of all these things. And that's what having a lawyer does. Is a good lawyer looks at the entire battlefield, looks at the entire game board and says, hey, based on everything we've got, we should make a deal, or we should go to court. I will tell you, sometimes I walked into court and I was supposed to have a certain judge, and that judge isn't there, and I've got a substitute, and I tell my client, we're going to try to continue this case. Yeah. Why? Because we don't want this judge. Like, this judge doesn't like A, B, and C, and you've got A, B, and C. Yeah. And so I've done that. I've got, as long as I have good grounds for continuance, and that's where experience and skill comes into it. Yeah. And that's why I always say it's a sad fact, but much like you really probably shouldn't do surgery on yourself. Right. Yeah. You really shouldn't litigate your own case. Again, if you have the means to hire a lawyer, you should.
Yeah. Just think about the cognitive bias that we all have. And in such a high pressure, high stakes situation, like any, court case as it develops, the judge can always say, I don't like the color of that client's jacket, or this lawyer, I didn't like what they said 6 cases ago with a different client. So those types of cognitive bias, the reputation, and then the skills that come along with it, I just think are so critical. But I think people don't want the judge to have cognitive bias. They want them to be like a neutral party. And I think that's not potentially always the case, because the judge is human, just like, the lawyer and the client is. And I think that becomes unfortunate or fortunate in some cases for people.
But it shouldn't be. I'm with you.
Yeah.
And this is where so you don't get a jury trial in divorces in Virginia. I don't know if anywhere, but certainly not in Virginia. And so a jury actually is much more likely to have these biases because they're the average. And a judge, a good judge, and we're fortunate. Tidewater, we have a great bench across most of the court. I mean, we just have good judges that really try to get it right. And they try to not bring that in there. We are human, and I'm sure it happens, but a lot less than for a jury, for instance, because they're just it's the first time in court, and they don't like what they're wearing. They don't like the way they say. Sometimes, and this is the crazy thing, is they'll judge their client on the attorney. Their attorney doesn't dress well, or their attorney was aggressive, or their attorney was a jerk. So I'm going to find in favor of the other side. So it's important for a lawyer in those cases. And for judges, it's really just your reputation's everything, especially in a small community like Tidewater, Virginia. It's so important that you're forthright for a judge, you're honest, and you get to know the judges. And I'm at the point in my career where I went to school with all these judges. I practiced with these judges. I'm friends with some of them, which certainly isn't going to make them rule in my favor. But if it's a close call or they have to give me the benefit of the doubt on something, that relationship really matters. Yeah,
it does. So when I was in college, I did economics, and I look at different systems and I try to think about the economics behind the system. And one of the questions that came in is like, what does the court economics look like? Like what is the judge incentivized to do based off what, keeps their system in good state? I think about it from my business standpoint, but I think about it, I think about the associations I'm involved in. Like if we don't get more members, then this association crashes. From your perspective, what is the court system economy? Obviously lawyers, they're more privatized, but from the judge's side of things and like the legislators and the people that are managing the courtroom, do you see things that they do that they have to do to keep their system, going, keeping themselves paid? Obviously the state pays them. But the incentives that the people at the state level give them, like you need $1 million in child support allocated this year, or you need 100 divorce cases this year, or else we got to fire one of these judges.
From my perspective, I think they're obviously aware of the economics of it. The clerk is the one that's really, and the clerk of all the courts, at least circuit courts, are actually elected. They're constitutional officers. But what the judges know that the volume of cases determines how many judges there are. So they're basically, the state does a survey to see how many cases are in each court. And then when a judge retires or otherwise there's a vacancy, the legislature always looks and says, oh, are we going to fill this? Or, hey, we're buried. We need another judge. And there's only so much money. And that's a big fight, obviously. And lawyers are always like, more judges, because we don't want to wait. So in Virginia Beach, for instance, if you file a custody matter in juvenile court, you're going to get a trial maybe 7, 9, 12 months away, which is tough, right? I mean, you're not even getting into court for a couple of months. So it's tough. So they always want to make sure that the cases, they want an administration, a swift administrative of justice anyway. The dual thing is the more cases they hear, the more funding there is, and hopefully the more positions will be. The clerk is really about the filing fees, and part of that's in the code, and it says, hey, we're going to charge you X to do Y. You have to file these 3 things separately because you have to pay 3 different fees. We're not going to do. So one of the big passions I have as a tech guy, I chaired the Virginia State Bar's Special Committee on Technology and the Future Practice of Law. It's a mouthful. But we looked at all sorts of things about the advancement of law and tech. And one of my real passions, which unfortunately didn't go anywhere at the time, is trying to get Virginia on an e-filing system, because we're not. Florida has one, took about 5 years. But the difference was Florida, the legislature is in control of the money. The Supreme Court's in charge of the courts, but their circuit court clerks aren't constitutionally elected. So in Virginia, nobody can tell these clerks what to do. You have to, you can do the carrot of more money or the stick of less money, perhaps, but they all have independence. So some clerks want to do this, some clerks want to do that. So in Virginia, we don't have a uniform e-filing system. So in some court, I might e-file, and we're paperless at my office, so that's great. There's others that I have to mail in the paper, and it's crazy. But that's an economic thing. So they look at, well, we make more money if you file it this way, or we do this, and it's going to cost money for the technology. And because we don't have an e-filing state, one particular clerk might say, I don't have the money to do this. But it is a real struggle. I think the judges hopefully don't necessarily pay attention to that because they're just doing their job. They just noted, and again, it lines up with what they should be doing anyway, which is the administration of justice. Yeah. The clerks are the ones that are really worried about the money. And then the legislature, there's never enough money.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's always more. And you want to grow the enterprise, and the court system is somewhat of an enterprise. Yeah. Right.
Well, you have the concept also of access to justice, right? So that's a buzzword. But the idea is justice delayed is justice lost. And the idea is if you have an issue, and for criminal, there's such a thing called a speedy trial. So there's a certain amount of time that you have to get to the system. That's not the case for custody. So there are mechanisms for expedited cases and emergency cases, but they're hard and it's tough and it's short. It's hard to get. So the idea is if it takes you 12 months, I mean, what does that do to your family? Now your kids are in limbo for 12 months and you're fighting about it for 12 months. Whereas if you just get a ruling, you can move on. And so it's tough. It's really tough.
Hey everyone, this episode is sponsored by my company, Valor Cybersecurity, where we help defense contractors navigate the uncharted waters of cybersecurity compliance. As a cyber attack victim myself, I know the impact that this plays in people's lives, and at Valor, we solve that each and every day. If you're a defense contractor feeling frustrated and confused when it comes to cybersecurity compliance, visit valor-cybersecurity.com, take our free assessment, and get started on your journey to clarity in cybersecurity. How has, in the 25 years practicing, and we'll get into the cybersecurity piece, but how has technology changed the legal system, in your opinion?
Tremendously. So I was like, I'm the old guy. So when I started, we researched cases with books and they have called pocket parts because cases are always coming out and then changing the law. So you read the book and then you got to go to the back for the pocket part, and that's always updated. We had Lexis and Westlaw, which are two big tools for research, but it was the big firms only used it because I graduated in 1999 and the internet was around, but it wasn't. Matter of fact, it's really funny is email at the time, the American Bar Association deemed that using email to talk about client cases was unethical because it was insecure. And of course, that's ridiculous. And so everyone's done that now. But that changed big. The email changed tremendously, the speed of things, legal research, and now AI. And so I teach AI. Actually, I teach seminars on AI. We use AI at the law firm, and I use AI across businesses. AI beyond society is fundamentally changing the way that we practice law. And for instance, if all you do is document review or all you do are simple wills, you're not going to have a job soon. Yeah. And then eventually it's going to do a lot more than that. And so especially with AI, it absolutely is fundamentally changing the entire legal system. And then on the negative side of things, you talk about deepfakes. So back in the day, I may had to worry about somebody photocopying something that looked weird, or maybe if eventually they knew Photoshop, if they were a real wonk, tech wonk. Now it's so easy to fake documents and video and audio. Yeah. And the judge won't know. And a lot of these judges aren't tech savvy. And unless you can hire a forensics expert and unless I have a huge high asset family law case, it's a real challenge. So it's fundamentally, it's a whole new world. I'm glad I'm not starting my career now. Right. I'm not ending anytime soon, but I'm glad that I'm not starting now. Yeah. It's too different.
Yeah, it's definitely changing rapidly, especially with AI. And I'm curious of the law toward technology. So we're both in the cybersecurity space, and I've been an expert witness on certain data breaches and things that have happened in hospital systems. And what I realize as somebody who comes in and talks about what this case looks like from an expert standpoint, because I understand most of the technical components, is that the judge, the other lawyer, even the lawyer trying to defend the case may just be a corporate lawyer. So right. They're hearing all these words which may ring ethical or unethical, like the company did what they said they were doing, but it wasn't implemented properly. And without that baseline technology understanding, how does that go all the way up to legislators to make laws that govern technology like artificial intelligence to be able to give people certainty that the law or the technology is not going to be used against them, whether it's in court or somebody creates a video of somebody doing a crime and it's like, that's not me on video, but it looks just like you because the deep fake. so good?
Yes, the short answer is not well.
Yeah.
So the problem is nobody except for the experts understand this stuff. And I'm a lawyer that does tech and knows some AI, but by no means am I an expert. But I know enough to understand I consider myself a text whisperer. So when I teach AI to lawyers, I start off with, here's what generative AI is, here's what an LLM is, and then I slowly build up to here's how you can use it ethically, and here's some things to worry about. But when you talk about law, so technology has always outpaced the law. So we've always had that issue, whether it be the flock cameras, which is a big one now, is it constitutional to monitor you at all times for surveillance, to I remember back when I was doing criminal law, really interesting criminal law, the big cases at the time were thermal imaging. So could police, is that a Fourth Amendment violation by them peeking into your house with the thermal camera, right? That's interesting. But now with AI, nobody understands it. And the laws they're reactive. And so people are overreacting. So a good example I have, it's not a law, but the courts are doing it. So courts are worried about hallucinations. Yeah. Because if you just use AI, like, for instance, ChatGPT, it's going to hallucinate cases and people are sanctioned. There's a great French technologist and lawyer called Damien Charlatine, and he has a whole list that he updates every day of sanctions across the world. And every time I teach AI, I give the new stat, and it's always 50 more, 100 more. Wow. But what's interesting is, so these judges now, there's some judges that have the standing rule that you have to let them know if you use AI, which is unnecessary because there's already rules that say if you submit wrong information, you can be sanctioned. And my analogy is I don't tell the judges if I have an associate drafted. Yeah. I don't tell I used Grammarly judge. I use spell check. Yeah. So it's just this knee-jerk reaction that, I need to know you're using this tech without understanding it. So I get a lot of pushback and a lot of, and as I will tell you, frankly, as a competitive advantage, it's good, I guess, that a lot of these lawyers are afraid to use it. I'm trying to get them over that because they're going to become extinct if they don't. Yeah. But yeah, so the laws are, I don't know where it's going to lead. Pandora's box is open. Yeah. So I'm not sure, but until the robot overlords take us, I always say please in my prompts. Yeah. Please give me. Yeah. Thank you, ChatGPT.
Yeah, they'll pass by you to go to the next.
That's what I'm saying, right? I don't have to be faster than the bear. I just have to be faster than you. Right?
Yeah, exactly. What about, you mentioned it, the right to monitor. So early on in my cybersecurity career, a lot of people would get spooked out by even the word cybersecurity because they felt like it was an intrusion of privacy. And I know there's a big, there's a big practice of privacy law and things of that nature. I know it's state by state, but what should people look out for when it comes to people, whether they are trying to do something wrong or just because they're curious, monitoring you without your approval, like the right to monitor you without you opting in, right?
Yeah. So the first thing that I always say, whether to be private citizens or lawyers, is understand that if you don't pay for what you're using, you're the commodity. So always pay for AI, unless you're not doing anything private. So if you're going to use free anything, if it's Grok, Gemini, ChatGPT, whatever, Claude, feel free to use the free version, but don't ever put anything private in there, anything personal at all or private. If you have a paid version, read the terms and conditions, which even lawyers don't do, which I don't understand. My wife is always upset with me because anytime we go anywhere and they're like, sign this, I'm like, I have to read it first. And she's like, just sign it. I'm like, I'm not going to sign it before reading first.
It's good practice.
I'm a lawyer, right? But no, so you need to read the terms and conditions. And if they say that they're not training on your data and that it's private, I don't know. I mean, my thing is I have to, at some point you have to trust them. So I'm okay enough. Like maybe I'm not putting in my deepest, darkest secrets, but especially with lawyers, we have an ethical duty to protect our client confidences. So that's a big one. So what I always say is use a specialty legal product. So Lexis AI, Westlaw's, there's one that I really like by an M&A attorney drafted called Calidus Legal, really love it. That's just for lawyers. And so they absolutely, it's HIPAA compliant, SOC 2. I mean, it's the whole thing. And they're like, oh, we don't train, we delete your stuff. So then I'm like, okay, great. And that's what we use for our client data, right? So, and also for the public, like I said, pay for it and it should hopefully be private. But understand, as you know, probably our entire lives are on the dark web anyway, which is not great, but it's just kind of a reality of the situation. because we found out too late that everything's not secure.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically look at the terms and conditions, pay for it, and just always be aware of what you're putting in things. Don't be sloppy. We do that all the time. And I tell, we have rules and procedures at our law firm is, never obviously email socials. Don't do this. But I get socials from other lawyers all the time. They send me discovery responses with their client social on it. And I said, okay, time out. A little bit of education here. I'm deleting this email. You should delete this email because if it's sitting on your system and you get breached, now you got a problem.
Yeah.
And they just don't think about it.
Yeah. I've worked with different PI type firms or people who are previous intelligence, and they have skills to monitor people. And when somebody does wrong by them, they will put trackers on their car and things. Is that legal for them to do that? And if they get caught, are there any repercussions because the court system is still adjusting to those types of advanced mechanisms where you could have a drone, over somebody's house and just sitting there.
Yeah.
And if you don't know how to get it down, can you go to the court and be like, this isn't supposed to be, over my house.
Right.
We need to get it taken down.
It's really interesting is I literally am having a conversation soon with an old friend of mine who does domestic violence work. And they had a question, says, look, I've got this tech person who has a lot of money is stalking his wife and doing all these things. And, what should you be aware of? And so I gave some basic information of, well, use this, check this, do this, don't do this. The short answer is, it's very difficult because the idea of finding it is difficult. Now, the good news is if it's illegal, so we have a computer trespass law. If the person doesn't own the vehicle, then a tracker, that's a crime. And if you can prove that, there are repercussions, and it can definitely have repercussions in your divorce, especially if you have kids, because it's always best interest of the children. There's a multi-factor test, and they look into that. And so a judge is going to be really not look kindly on the fact that you're stalking your spouse, but it's difficult. And I just got off the phone with a lawyer earlier this week. They called and said, hey, can I pick your brain about something? And sure, I got on the phone. And it wasn't about stalking, but they had a disgruntled client that they fired. The client is in the tech world, and the client is now waging a anonymous negative review. And so it's really like $50 a month across all these things, using a VPN so the IPs aren't coming in. And the idea, how am I going to, this is killing my business, and Yelp doesn't care, Google, it's this whole thing. And so I sort of walk through it, but the answer is there's not a lot you can do. So from all areas, it's very difficult.
Yeah, it is. I come across people that struggle with that because they see Greg cybersecurity and they'll call me and be like, I've been cyber stalked by a past boss for 5 years and nobody has an answer. I've called the police, tried to call the FBI. And it goes back to your point that technology leads the way and then law, follows. And I think that's with any rulemaking is you have to get to a point where it's critical enough to make a law around it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's only critical to certain people.
For sure. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. What about, on the monitoring topic, cameras? There's cameras everywhere nowadays. Sure. And obviously that hasn't changed. Cameras have always been around, but how does that go into the law of things? Obviously you're never not on camera with all the different angles and businesses that have cameras. But being able to, and you know this because you're tech savvy and know the technology that anybody can hack into those cameras to change the footage because of deep fakes and things of that nature. So it goes back to integrity. It's like confidentiality, integrity, availability. I think that integrity is at huge threat. Confidentiality is something you deal with all day. And then availability, that's more like business continuity and IT folks. But I think the integrity piece and the trust of those types of mechanisms are slowly diminishing. How do you look at that, as a lawyer when it comes to the integrity of what you're looking at or what people are making decisions based off of? Because I feel like at some point the law should say like, here's some guardrails, right? Like we have AI guardrails and things of that nature, but the ability for people to modify things like those reviews, they're giving fake reviews and putting it out there on a system that doesn't have laws to say if you put in 3 bad reviews, we delete all 3 because that's the law.
I start with the premise that I only take clients that I don't think are lying to me, right? Yeah. And sometimes I'm wrong, but that hopefully is, so I hope they have the integrity and the honesty for what they're telling me. And if they tell me something, I take it at face value until I can't. And when I get something from somebody else, if the attorney is telling me that it's authentic, and I trust the attorney, then I'm like, okay. But if it's some critical piece of evidence that is crucial and my client's telling me it didn't happen or I don't trust this, at that point, that's when we dig in and try to figure it out. You know, it's interesting. The federal rules, by the way, are always way ahead of the state rules. So they deal with bigger cases. Federal's evidence, for instance, they deal with bigger cases. They've always been on the forefront of ESI, electronically stored information stuff, which I teach some classes on. So I always look to the federal rules. And so they're always looking and they're developing. And one of the rules on authenticity is actually, I think it's still in committee last time I looked at it, which was maybe 6 to 9 months ago. But they're literally looking at how do we deal with deepfakes? How are we dealing with, especially with AI, what are the rules going to be on how to try to judge to try to deal with this? And I think one of the reasons why it hasn't, I don't think it's been approved yet, is they couldn't quite figure it out. So they're at least thinking about it, which makes me happy.
Yeah.
And that's part of the issue. You know, it just depends on where you are. And I tell you, a lot of times I have to educate judges. And I come in and I say, well, judge, here's the rule. So when I first started my practice, so I started my practice as solo in 2012. I was paperless and cloud-based then, which was radical in 2012. So the rules require you to answer discovery. And I would tell them, I said, look, I can send it to you on a thumb drive, or I can send it to you. Even back then, it might even just been a DVD or a CD. Yeah. And they go, no, I want paper. I said, well, the rules don't require me to give you paper. And I had one lawyer one time take me to judge, I want paper. And the older judge said, well, Mr. Parks, what do you say about that? I said, well, first, the rule doesn't say I have to. Secondly, the documents I've given her are bait stamped, word searchable, and everything else. And the judge says, well, that seems very convenient for her. Why is she objecting? I said, because she doesn't like to look on her computer. She wants to print it out. I shouldn't have to pay for that. And I convinced the judge, well, 2025, you now just share everything cloud, on the cloud or whatever. But that's sort of where you have to start, is educate the judges, realize the issues, hope that it's true. But it's hard. And the worst part is you have to have the right case to pay for all of this. Yeah. I can't tell you how many cases that I probably could have won had I had another 50 grand to hire an expert or prove this. And we settled because I couldn't prove the smoking gun. I couldn't do the forensics to find the email or the chain or the alteration. And we went from there. That's why AI is such a thing. Now, it's so easy to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think about when I put my tin hat on that, when the robots take over, or when and if the robots take over, I think at the foundation of that is the integrity, right? And, China has their social credit score system, and the machines, like the traffic cameras, can start manipulating what is happening. Maybe it's just a simple traffic ticket. You're like, I didn't go through that intersection. How'd they put my car with my plate there? And I'm getting all these traffic tickets, like something simple like that. But, right. Committing crimes because you put a bad post out about, the government, or when they start to kind of evaluate each of us as citizens on some type of, scoring system based off of what they see as right. Sure. That's kind of that. It's not the government conspiracy. It's the machines creating their own type of, governmental type system that we're evaluating people on. And if somebody does something the machine doesn't like, then they can really threaten the integrity of the entire system. I think that's where my brain goes. Other people's brains go different directions, but.
Well, I don't think it's look, here's the thing. I'm an AI enthusiast. However, I read an article about 2 years ago, about a year and a half ago, I guess, that it was a very long article about AI and how it's developing and sort of a philosophical type thing. But at the end, it said, look, we really should have treated our AI algorithms like the Manhattan Project instead of a tech thing. Because now it's out. And once it's out, it's out. And hopefully we, United States, will use it responsibly. But China might not, North Korea might not, Russia might not, or some other government, or just a criminal organization. Yep. As you know, the hacking, right? So the idea is it's out now. And so that's it's too late. So Pandora's box really is a kind of a thing. Yeah. And so I'm a little pessimistic about how we're going to use it, because I don't think because we don't understand it. Even the experts don't quite understand it all. So the idea is, how are we going to control this thing that doubles every 6 months? Yeah. So now that we've scared the crap out of your audience, but the idea is, on a personal level, I'm using it as much as I can for good.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be more efficient for my clients. I'm trying to use it to save time. I'm trying to get rid of a lot of the work that my staff doesn't want to do. We're not like, one of the things I was talking, like, well, some people have an ethical thing, like, oh, you're going to fire people, it's going to replace jobs. I said, not for us. So as an example, we're looking at AI answering services. We're not getting, we have 3 offices, we have 3 receptionists. We're not getting rid of the receptionists, but they won't answer the phone anymore. Now they can do more in-person contact with the clients. They can do more meaningful work. The AI can do the answering the phone, which they're always in a good mood. They're better at it. They're never busy. They're never away from their desk. Everybody wins.
Yeah, I think a lot of that, using it for good, comes along with awareness. You guys are aware of it at your firm, so you're able to turn it to good. I think there's still that gap, just like there was with the internet, where people are using it with the intention of the benefits, not understanding the costs. And I think that comes along with education. And I look at the law field as a practice as so critical to the regulation of civilization, or the rulemaking of society to a point, or bringing out those rules into the world, or holding those rules to a standard. I see that as so critical. So how do we get more attorneys, more regulators, more people that are making decisions on the law, educated and aware of what these technologies can do and how they should help individuals make decisions at the end of the day? Because a lot of people are rule followers, right? They're law followers. But if there's no clear law or clear thought process around, here's how I should think when I'm going into it, then it's kind of like the wild, wild west.
Yeah, I think that's the $1 billion question, right? So at the end of the day, I think we just need to continue to try to educate them. And that's what when I teach this AI to lawyers, I'm trying to teach them what it is, how they can use it responsibly, why they should do it. And I say, and people that know me as the tech guy, they're like, all right, this is hyperbole. He's making it. I said, look, if you're not on board with AI, you're going to be gone, because your competitor is going to use it, your business, your clients, especially if you have sophisticated clients. They expect these corporations that hire outside counsel, they expect you to use AI, and you can no longer bill what you bill, because what took you 10 hours should take 5 minutes, which is one of the things we're looking into our firm right now, because family law, for instance, has traditionally been an hourly model. The hourly model is never great because it builds inefficiencies. And if you're unethical, then you're padding your bill for time, which we never do. And it annoys me when I see that on other files, other lawyers. But at the end of the day, if we're looking at a fixed fee tiered system for family law, we're trying to figure that out to say, okay, the discovery stage is going to be X amount of money. And then I can actually make that less than it would be for hourly, because AI can be more efficient. So the client pays less, I make more, and it takes less time. Again, I'm always looking for the total win solution, which is why I do more business than litigation these days. But so in lawyers that don't do that, they're still doing the hourly and writing their things out by hand, they're going to have a problem.
Yeah. Now, I know you're a leader and a innovator, and you kind of look at ways to poke the walls within the system and educating other lawyers.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit about, lawyer listening in wants to understand it? What are some resources they could use, or ways to engage with you to put those perspectives in their psyche and then be able to actually put them into practice?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a real passion. So when I started my firm in 2012, I found out I like the business of law more than the practice, even though I obviously still practice. I own my firm with one other lawyer, and we co-run it. And I like the business of law. But over time, being in different coaching groups and going to these different educational seminars and hiring personal coaching, I really found that I like sharing this information and helping other lawyers be successful as law firm owners. And so I started a law firm coaching business called The Motivated Lawyer. Motivate's an acronym. Everything from mindset to information, which is metrics. But I go over all the principles of, including tech and AI. So the second T is tech and AI.
Nice.
And so if you go to themotivatedlawyer.com, right now I've got a newsletter I've been sending out every Tuesday morning. It's since April. So I send out and I talk about a business principle. I talk about the AI, local AI, recent AI news, and a practical AI tip. So that's one thing is I try to educate through that free resource. And then, as part of that, and I do coaching and some other things that I'm happy to talk to any law firm owner about. But at the end of the day, I think it's important to stay curious. So the E in motivates education. And the idea is you should always, and you'll appreciate this as an athlete, you don't become an elite athlete without coaching. You just don't. I don't care how good you are or how much natural talent you have, how many reps you put in. You need somebody to show you the way to really level you up. Same thing for lawyers. And lawyers, we tend to be in this grind mode that, I'm a good lawyer. I need to make the money. I got to pay the bills. I don't have time. I don't have time to run the firm. I don't have time to learn. I don't have time to go to this thing. You don't have time not to. And so my idea is there's some free Facebook groups, believe it or not, Facebook for us older lawyers, but they're great. They're law firm owners and they share information. There's a lot of really good coaching groups. So at the end of the day, what I always tell any lawyer that I meet that are interested, just call me, email me. I'm happy to talk to you and give you resources that may fit your best circumstance.
Excellent.
But definitely stay educated is the biggest.
Yeah, we'll definitely put a link to that in the show notes. I think that's an invaluable resource for people to plug into. And I think it's good to stay connected to innovation when you're in any field, especially in one as important as the legal field. And I think most lawyers, they want to stay abreast, but it's a complex, multi-dimensional type practice that you have to understand a lot of different information. So getting it from a source that tries to translate it and simplify it, I think, is critically important.
Well, it is. And again, having done this, right? So as a lawyer, you practice law and you're so busy helping clients and doing what you need to do. And then as a law firm owner, when you start out, you're so busy doing the law, paying the bills, figuring it out, that a lot of times you let the business of the law and the practice slip because you don't know what you don't know. And they certainly don't teach you that in law school. Yeah. So that's where, and I really honestly, we've done well, and the more coaching we've gotten, the better we've been. But I wish I'd sort of found some of this stuff early. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of what I try to do is like, you're interested in, or you just started a practice. Here, more than what I can tell you what to do, let me tell you what not to do. Let me help you level up quicker. And so, and we try to do that at the firm as well. So firm is Parks Zeigler. We've got 14 lawyers. We have an office in Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, one in Elizabeth City. We do 12 different practice areas. But that's what we do. We have 3 lawyers right now that have a year or less experience. We had 2 William & Mary guys come in this summer that we are hiring in the fall. So we're going to have 5 lawyers with 2 years or less next fall. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to teach them on AI right away. Yeah. Here's what to do. Here's the experience so that they can help, and maybe I can work less.
Yeah. It's coming. It's coming. When you get smart, curious people on the team that ask questions of, why do we do things this way? How do I use my expertise? I think it really helps.
They don't have to unlearn bad habits.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I teach. I get them to mold.
Yeah, I like that.
Fantastic.
So one of the ways we like to round out the show, because we're all about connection and mindset and linking those two up. And one of our listeners recently commented in and basically just said, I feel over-marketed and disconnected. And that's some of the feelings we get from our audience. So I'm curious, with all the experience you've had, with everything you're up to now and you're going to do in the future, what does the word connection mean to you?
It means a lot of things depending on the context. So I'll give you 2. So for my clients, connection is I want to connect them to their best result. So that, again, I always ask, what's your goal? What's the best result for you? And then I want to connect what we're doing to that. I don't want it to be a churn and burn on attorney's fees or this endless goal to get back at somebody. That's not helpful. And you're not going to feel good about it at the end of the day. And then for my law firm clients, owner clients, I just try to connect them to the best firm for them. And so the motivated lawyer, the M is for mindset. And one of the first things I do is I try to sit down and figure out why you're practicing law. What's your goals? What kind of firm do you want? The tagline for the company is the firm you want, the life you deserve. And that's very intentional. So a lot of people ask me, why didn't you just do a tech thing? Because you're the tech guy. You could just teach AI to lawyers any day of the week. I go, right. That's only one small piece. I want people to look at the whole of their firm and create the perfect practice for them. And that might be like us trying to build an empire and get big and have all these lawyers. It might be a lifestyle firm. It might be the best environmental lawyer in the country. Who knows? But that the connection to your perfect life is really important to me, especially as I get older. So I'm 51, and I say charitably on the back third or back half, realistically maybe back third. So I don't want to do stuff I don't want to do. Right? Yeah. I did that for a long time. I was a grinder, right? So I want other people to be the best fulfilled they can be. And again, lawyers are just hard workers, and sometimes they get lost in the work. Mm-hmm. So that connection is really important to me.
Kellam Parks, thanks so much.
Hey, thank you so much. Good to see you, sir.
Hey, thank you so much for listening. If you're feeling more connected from this episode, please like, subscribe, and share with someone that you care about. And I'll see you on the next episode of the Connected Mindset Podcast.